We've heard that with a 1 meter of sea level rise, which the United Nations is telling us we may see by the end of the century, it would have major impacts on the coastal areas, other territories of Gulf states, and also on their citizens, on coastal cities, on infrastructure, energy generation infrastructure, and desalinization plants. We also know that if we continue to have CO2 emissions at the same rate, that we're looking at a world where what today is an extreme summer temperature will become the new normal. So the very highest temperatures that folks are experiencing in different parts of the world, including the Gulf, will be the new normal summer temperature unless we're able to bend these curves. And then finally, what we know is that the Gulf region is already and is likely to become more water constrained in a region that will also be suffering greater and greater scarcities of water, making it more difficult to import water. I think the last thing that we know, not so much from the discussions today, but also from recent reports by the World Bank, is that a 4-degree future, which is where we would be headed by the end of the century, in that future it will be very difficult, it will be impossible, in fact, for most of us to adapt. So that's part of the picture. But then there's another very positive part of the picture, and we've also heard about that today. So we've heard, for example, that all of the Gulf states have taken on renewable energy targets, some of them very ambitious indeed. For example, Saudi Arabia's target of 30% by 2030, but also the UAE renewable energy targets, Qatar's 10% renewable energy target, and its commitment to get 80% of the energy that it's going to use for desalinization from renewable sources. We also know that these are countries that have the resources to implement these targets and even more ambitious targets very quickly if they decide to do that. So it could be that we're here at this COP at a point where we're about to see some very big change in the region on 2 issues. So one would be a conversion of national energy systems to renewable energy. And of course, in addition to fossil reserves, the Gulf is also very rich in renewable resources, and especially in solar power. I think the other thing that we're seeing is a lot of thinking around how to reduce consumption. Because of course, as resources shrink globally relative to the number of people that we're going to have, the UN tells us we will be 9 billion people on the planet by 2050. And that's going to put a huge pressure on food, water, and energy for all of us. So what we've heard from our colleagues at the World Futures Council is that there are a lot of ways for urban residents in Gulf states, that would be most people living in the Gulf, to substantially reduce their footprint, to reduce their energy consumption, to reuse waste, to reuse water, create closed systems, thereby make these cities much more robust to the effects of climate change, some of which are coming, and we know that they won't. We can't avoid them because of the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. I think the last thing I'd like to say is that we often talk about the transition to renewable energy away from fossil fuels as painful and as a challenge and as a problem. And of course it won't be without its bumps in the road. But we can also look at it as a major opportunity, as an opportunity for all of the young people in the Gulf states. It's a very young population, which is in many ways a gift. An opportunity to provide employment, highly skilled employment in renewable energy industries, and indeed that's, as I understand it, some of the thinking around Masdar. We could also see this region as a place where you see that transition most clearly, and where you see in some of these investments and targets as a place where you actually can make things happen very quickly and in scale. So I think I'll stop there and just ask the audience if you have